So to begin off, I'll be drafting a basic skirt block. So I'm just marking in 1.5 inch zipper allowance because the back of a skirt will be having a zipper. So I'm just marking that all through. Then I'll join that with a straight line. Then drawing a straight line on top of my pattern to act as my starting point or my waistline. So I'll just draw that like that. This will become my waistline. From the waistline, I'm marking down 8 inches. That's my waist to hip measurement. So I'll take 8 inches all through, then I'll connect that with a straight line. I'm coming down from the waistline to 27. That's the skirt length. I've already added 1 inch seam allowance, so it's supposed to be 26 plus 1 inch sewing allowance at the bottom. It becomes 27. Then I'll just connect that. This becomes my hemline. On my waistline, I'm marking my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4. Then I'm coming down 5 inches from that point. I'm then connecting these points like this. Then on the waistline, I'm coming out of this point 1/2 inch on both sides. Then I'm just connecting these points to form my dart like so. On my waistline, I'm marking my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch that the dart will be taking in, plus 1.5 inch sewing seam allowance. On my hip line, I'm marking my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch seam allowance. On my hemline, I'm marking my hip circumference divided by 4. I'm not adding in any allowance. Then I'll be joining these points. Then adding in my grain lines just to know the grain on which I'll be cutting the garment. Then the fold, because when I'll be cutting the front piece, this part will be on fold, but for the back I'll be cutting with the zip allowance. So I'm just extending all this, then I'll be cutting the pattern out. Now I have my fabric here. It's folded into 2. Okay, so I've folded my fabric into 2 like this. Now I want to cut out my back, so you can have 2 pieces, doesn't necessarily have to be folded into 2. Then I'll grab my pattern like this, I'll pin it down, then I'll cut it out. You're going to notch the dart on the fabric. Then this is my lining pieces. There are 2 pieces, so I've laid my pattern on it just like I did on the main fabric. Then I'm just cutting out the excess to have my two lining pieces. I'm still going to notch the lining pieces to just to know where my dart will be. Then I have taken out the pattern and I'm folding in my zipper allowance because I want to use this pattern to cut out the front lining before manipulating the front pattern. So I've folded in my zipper, and this is the pattern that I'll be using to cut my lining. This is the piece, sorry, not the pattern. So I've folded it into 2 like this, and I'm going to put my pattern on top of it. Note that the zipper allowance is folded in, so we don't have the zipper allowance here. You can even cut the zipper allowance out because we don't need it. Now I'm just going to pin everything down, and I'll be cutting out my lining piece. And also remember to notch your dart. Now I'm confirming my nipple to nipple measurement, and I'm duplicating the same measurement, which is 4 inches, on the bottom of my pattern. Then I'm just marking 4 inches at random places in between for me to get a straight line, because I'm intending to join this line in dotted to the end of the pattern. Now from the line that I drew earlier, I'm marking 3.5. It's 3.5. I'm marking 3.5 from that line here, so I'm marking the 3.5 at random places to the bottom of my pattern. Then I'll be joining it in dotted, just like I did to the other line. Now make sure to label your patterns. This will be the center front, this will be the middle, and this will be the side, just not to confuse after cutting through all these patterns. So the next thing I'm going to do, of course, is to cut through the dotted lines, and I'll cut out the dot because I don't need it. Now I'm just indicating the number of pieces that I'm supposed to cut. So for this one I'm supposed to be cutting 2, for the middle and the side I'm supposed to be cutting 2, but for the center front one I'll be cutting 1 because it will be on fold. Okay, so here I've already cut out the pieces and as you can see, the center front piece is on fold because it's the center, it's the front. Then the middle and the side I've cut out 2 pieces, and I've remembered to leave joining allowances at the middle of the patterns, but for the side and the center front there is no allowance. Yeah. Now this is the back pieces. I have 2 pieces of the main fabric and 2 pieces of the main lining main. Now on the lining I'm going up 2 inches, then I'll be cutting this out because the lining has to be shorter than the main fabric to have a good finishing at the hemline. So I'll just cut that out. Then I'm going to take out one main piece, and remain with 1. Then I'll get 1 lining and put it on top of the main fabric like this. Then I'm just stitching the down part, just the down part, and I'm going to repeat the same on this other fabric. So the right side is facing up, I'm putting on it the lining, then I'll be stitching the down part like this. So after stitching the down part, I'm just pulling it up, then I'll be pinning the waistline, and I'm going to stitch the sides of this fabric here and here. That is done. So I'm just turning this to the right side to show you how it's looking from the right side. This is what I have from the right side. Now I'm going to stitch this top part again, just to make sure the lining and the fabric stays in place before stitching my dart. So I'll just mark 5 inches because that was the length of my dart. Then I'm just going to stitch a dart fold here like so. So I've done the same thing on both my back pieces, and this is how they're looking. Now I'm going to stitch this down part. I'm going to stitch leaving 6 inches at the bottom for my slit and 8 inches at the top for my zipper. So I'll be stitching the middle part. I've stitched that, and I've already gone ahead to add in my zipper, and you can see my slit. So we're basically done with the back part of the skirt. Moving on to the front pattern, I have already cut out my pieces that will be used as loopholes. They are 2 inches long, and there are so many. I've just cut out so many pieces because I need many loopholes. So I'm just going to take out my center front pattern to remain with my main fabric like this. Now this is how I'm going to put in my loopholes. I'll come down 1.5 inch from the top, then that's where my first loophole will be. Then from there I'll be marking 4 inches apart up to the hemline. So I'm just giving it a I'm just marking 4 inches apart, 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches mpaka chini. Then those will be the points that I'll be putting in my loopholes. So I will just pin them down, and I'll repeat the same to the other side of this front piece. And while folding the loopholes, kindly make sure that the part that is folded is facing the center front line, and the part that is open is the part that is being pinned on this line. Okay, you can see the part that I've pinned is the part of the loophole that is open. So this is what I have now. I'll grab my middle pattern, the pieces that I cut for the middle, then I'll just put away my pattern, and I will pin it like this, right sides facing. So this is how the middles are supposed to be. Now I'll just be placing them on the center front, making sure the right sides are facing. Then you will be opening up where the loopholes are. You'll unpin the loophole, then you will repin it again, catching the middle, this middle piece. Just look at what I'm doing, because explaining this thing, Joe, just look at what I'm doing and follow suit, because it's self-explanatory. Now as you can see, I've pinned them. Now I'm going to stitch the sides, and when you open up, this is how it will be looking. So I'll head over and stitch them down. You can see I've stitched. Now when you open it up, this is what I have. Moving forward, I'm coming at the top and I'm marking down 1.5 inch again. Then from that point, I'm marking 4 inches. I'm marking a difference of 4 inches all the way down. So you can mark 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches until the bottom. Then on this other side, I've marked 1.5 inch down. Then I'm just marking the difference of 4 inches. I'm marking points with a difference of 4 inches. Then I've also marked some points here at the top of this side pattern, this side fabric. Then I'm just pinning in my loopholes. I'll show you the point that I'm talking about later, but for now, I'm just putting in my loopholes like so. So I'm just pinning them all through, and I'll repeat the same thing to this other side. You can see I've pinned. Now these are the points that I was talking about. Now the next thing we are doing, I'm grabbing my side front, then I'm unpinning it to remove the pattern and remain with the main pieces. Now I'll just be putting my pieces right side facing the piece that I have on the working table. Then I'll repeat the same procedure. I'm just going to identify where my loophole is and pin it, then I'll replace the pin again. Now this time round, pinning it together with this new part that I've just added, which is the side front. So I'm just identifying where the pin is, I'm removing the pin, then I'm pinning it again, catching this side front piece. Okay, I hope you guys are understanding. Then I'll just pin everything down, and I'm going to stitch these parts, and I'll also stitch those top pieces that I've shown you. Yeah, so I'm done stitching, and this is what I have. When you open it up, you'll see the loopholes. They're looking so beautiful. Mine are black. I think they're not that visible, but I hope you can see them. Yeah, so that is how they're looking. Now I'll grab my lining piece. I've already stitched down my darts on the lining pieces. Now I'll place it on top of this main fabric like this, and I'm just going to stitch the down part. Before stitching, I'm cutting out 2 inches from the down part, the same way I did on the back lining. So I'm just marking 2 inches up, then I'll be cutting this out. Now you're going to pull this lining to the bottom part, and just make sure you pull it to the bottom, then you're going to stitch the down part. After stitching the down part, pull it to the waistline, pull it to the top and pin it down for it not to move when you will be stitching the sides. Okay, now after pinning, I'm just going to trim the excess because I have a lot of excess on my sides, so I'm just going to trim that off like so to make sure everything is even. Yeah, so I'm basically just trimming off the excess that I have. Then I'll head over to my sewing machine and I'll stitch down the sides. I've stitched it. Now I'm just turning this to the right side to show you what I have. Now on your waist area, you're going to pin the main fabric and the lining together. Then you're going to stitch this part, the top part. Yeah, so after once that was done, I grabbed my back piece and I placed it on top of the front piece. Then I'm just going to stitch the side seams like so. Now moving on to my waistband, I've cut out a piece which is 3.5 inches wide, and the length is my waist circumference plus 3 inches. I'm going to stitch down this side, this part. I'm going to stitch it down like that. Now this is how I'm going to put in my waistband. Let's first turn this thing to the right side and open the zipper. Now you see where you've stitched. I'll just show you how you're going to stitch in your waistband. You're going to put it like this. Let me get my pins and show you clearly. Now this is how you're going to stitch it. Let me pin it to show you a clear picture of how you're going to stitch this down. You're going to stitch it like this, the way I'm pinning. See, you can see how I'm pinning. And by the way, remember that I've ironed my gum or my canvas on my waistband. So I'm done stitching and this is what I have. Now this is how I'm going to stitch this other part of the band. I'm going to tack this seam, this part that I stitched earlier. I'm going to tack it up. The opposite of tacking in is tacking up. I'm going to tack it inside this band. Okay, then I'll be folding in this band the way you see me folding. Then I'll be pinning it. I'll be pinning it down like so to the end. And when doing this, kindly be so careful because the pins are so sharp and you might end up pricking yourself, so be very careful when you're doing this. So I'll be pulling it like this all through and pinning to the very end. Can you see how I've pinned? So you can see I've pinned it all the way to the end. Then when you come to this end where I'll be having my buttonhole, I've folded it in from the side. Then when I'll be getting to this point, I'm going to fold it up. I'm going to fold this part like so, and I'll just be pinning it. You see this place? This is how I'll be folding it. I'll just fold it in like this, and I'm going to pin this part, this corner, this corner here. I'll pin it down. Then I'm going to stitch it all through. Then when I come to this corner, I'm stitching like this. Then that will be the place where I'll put my buttonhole because my skirt will be having a button. So yeah, that's done. And I know you've seen the button popping. Now it's time to add our lacing. So I've folded a strap just with my fabric, and this is how I'm going to put it in. I know you can see I've already added the lace to one side of the skirt, so this other side, this is how I'll be lacing it. I used the wrong fabric and it gave me really a hard time. but then we have to do this. So just look keenly and at how, or look keenly on how I'm lacing this part of the skirt. And just in case you want to know how long my straps are, they are as long as my tape, my full tape measurement multiplied by 2, but I still went ahead to trim off at the bottom because they were too long. So yeah. So that is it. I won't put it on because it's not mine. Bye for now.